She keeps checking her phone. Nothing. No message, no call, not even a seen notification. He's somewhere out there, silent, unbothered, and she hates how much that bothers her. She tells her friends she's over it, but her body knows she's lying. Because deep down, she doesn't want him to text. She wants the chase to end her confusion. I've seen it too many times. The man who barely looks her way becomes the one she can't stop thinking about. It's not because he's special, it's because he's unavailable. And that unavailability triggers something ancient, a craving that feels like love but isn't. What changed everything for me was realizing this isn't romance, it's brain chemistry. The less he gives, the more she needs. The silence becomes the hook. By the end of this video, you'll understand why indifference creates obsession and how to break its spell. The cruel irony of human desire is this: the more someone gives us attention, the less we value it. What feels intoxicating at first quickly becomes background noise once it's guaranteed. Attention, when freely given, loses its magic. It turns into air, always there, unnoticed until it's gone. That's why the men who show no interest often become the most unforgettable. Their silence isn't appealing because it's kind. It's appealing because it's rare. When a woman feels seen all the time, she stops noticing it. But when she's ignored, she becomes hyper-aware of every glance, every pause, every possibility of connection. It's not logical, it's neurological. The mind values contrast, not consistency. Predictable affection comforts the heart but numbs the thrill. Unpredictability keeps it awake. I used to think showing constant care was the highest form of love. It wasn't. It was emotional overfeeding. An overfed emotions stop craving. When everything you offer is on demand, your value drops. But when your energy becomes scarce, curiosity replaces comfort. That's the paradox. Attention creates warmth, but distance creates want. The man who shows no interest doesn't always repel. He awakens a primal curiosity, a question that keeps echoing. Why doesn't he see me? And in trying to answer that question, she falls into the trap. Because once her mind starts chasing certainty, her emotions follow, not toward love, but toward addiction. Every addiction, gambling, social media, toxic love, follows the same pattern: unpredictable rewards. The brain doesn't crave certainty, it craves the possibility of reward. That's why slot machines are addictive, not because they always win, but because they sometimes do. Love works the same way. When a man shows no interest, but occasionally gives a glimpse, a look, a short text, a rare compliment, it becomes emotional gambling. Her brain lights up not from affection but from anticipation. Every small interaction feels like a jackpot. Every silence feels like withdrawal. That rhythm, attention, absence, attention, wires the brain into dependency. I once watched someone fall for a man who texted once a week. That single message consumed her for days, not because of what he said, but because of the relief it gave after so much uncertainty. That's the hook, not the man, not the words, but the momentary end of anxiety. The more inconsistent he becomes, the harder she tries to stabilize him. The harder she tries, the more control he has. This isn't romance, it's operant conditioning, psychology disguised as passion. What most people miss is that addiction doesn't come from love or even lust. It comes from inconsistency. Predictable affection soothes. Unpredictable affection enslaves. And the real danger? Once her emotions adjust to chaos, peace starts to feel like boredom. When a man shows no interest, it doesn't just hurt a woman's feelings, it wounds her ego. And that's what turns attraction into obsession. See, love seeks connection, but the ego seeks correction. It can't handle not being chosen, not being seen, not being enough. So it creates a new mission. I'll make him want me. What started as curiosity becomes a crusade. I once watched a woman chase a man she didn't even like. She admitted it later. She wasn't drawn to him. She was drawn to what his rejection said about her. Her ego couldn't accept the verdict. That's the trap. The less he validates her, the more she invests in proving her worth. It's no longer about him, it's about restoring her identity. Most people confuse this with passion, but it's just wounded pride wearing perfume. Rejection hijacks logic. The brain starts rewriting reality. He's just mysterious. He's playing hard to get. He's different. But none of that is true. he's just not interested. And yet, the ego keeps whispering, "You can fix this. You can change his mind." That whisper fuels the chase, not because she loves him, but because she can't stand losing. Here's the dark truth. Indifference doesn't just deny validation. It creates a vacuum where the ego starts fighting itself. And nothing feels more powerful than turning indifference into desire. But that's not connection. That's conquest. Every unforgettable connection has one thing in common: contrast. Warmth after cold, attention after silence, softness after distance. That contrast doesn't just create emotion, it amplifies it. The man who gives nothing most of the time, then suddenly shows a flicker of interest, creates an emotional high no consistent lover ever could. That's the formula of addiction. Starvation followed by a feast. Her brain doesn't remember how often he ignores her. It remembers how amazing it feels when he doesn't. That brief moment of relief burns into memory stronger than days of stability ever could. We mistake that intensity for chemistry, but it's not chemistry, it's recovery. It's the same dopamine release an addict feels after withdrawal, and because the relief feels euphoric, she confuses the pain that came before it with love. The danger is, emotional contrast makes chaos feel romantic. It trains the heart to equate struggle with meaning. The more she suffers, the more real it feels. That's why she can't leave. The absence makes her ache. The attention makes her sore. She becomes hooked on the swing, and once that rhythm begins, silence, affection, silence, it's not about love anymore. It's about survival. Because deep down, she's not chasing the man. She's chasing that next high. The feeling of finally being seen again. Every woman, whether she admits it or not, has met this man. The one who never fully arrives. He's charming, but detached. Present, but distant. He looks at her in a way that feels like he sees everything, yet says almost nothing. That mystery becomes magnetic, not because of who he is, but because of what she projects onto him. He represents the unreachable archetype, the man who can't be possessed, only experienced. The more self-contained he is, the more she fills in the blanks. Every unanswered question becomes a fantasy. Every silence becomes a story. She doesn't fall in love with him. She falls in love with the space he leaves open for her imagination. The truth is, the man who shows no interest doesn't always intend to create desire. His distance simply reveals hers. His stillness forces her to confront her own emptiness, and instead of facing that void, she tries to fill it with him. He becomes a symbol of something bigger, the validation she's chasing, the piece she's missing, the mystery she wants to solve. The less she knows him, the more power he gains. That's why unreachable always feels irresistible. He's not competing for her attention, he's competing against her need for control, and in a world where everyone overshares, his silence feels sacred. But that's the illusion. She isn't drawn to him. She's drawn to the calm he represents, the self-assurance she craves. Contrary to what most men think, women don't want easy love. They want felt love. Something that stirs, challenges, awakens. It's not chaos they crave, but emotional depth. And unfortunately, the man who shows no interest often triggers that depth by accident. From childhood, women are fed a diet of stories that glorify struggle. The prince doesn't win her heart because he's available. He wins it because he earns it. The challenge makes the love feel valuable. So when she meets a man who's indifferent, that instinct resurfaces. If she has to fight for his attention, it must mean it's worth something. What she doesn't realize is that her attraction isn't romantic. It's neurological. The mind mistakes effort for importance. The harder something is to attain, the more valuable it becomes. That's why a man who gives nothing can feel more magnetic than one who gives everything. He doesn't make her feel loved, he makes her feel alive. The chase becomes the purpose, the tension becomes the story. But love built on challenge collapses once the challenge ends. Because once she gets him, the thrill fades, and the same brain that chased him begins to wander again, searching for the next emotional mountain to climb. That's not love. That's self-abandonment disguised as desire. Silence is the most powerful communication tool a man can use. Not because it's strategic, but because it's interpreted. When he doesn't text back, doesn't explain, doesn't chase, she starts filling in the blanks. Her mind can't handle the unknown, so it starts building a narrative. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's losing interest. Maybe he's with someone else. Every possibility stirs emotion, curiosity, fear, desire, and each one deepens the bond. Silence creates space, and space demands meaning. That's why it feels so loud. When he says nothing, she hears everything. She replays their last conversation, searching for clues. She magnifies every small memory, assigning it weight it never had. The less he gives, the more her imagination gives for him. This is how obsession starts, not through connection, but through projection. The man who says little becomes a mirror for her fantasies. His absence becomes proof of depth. His distance becomes evidence of power. But silence is a dangerous game. What begins as intrigue eventually becomes anxiety. The mind addicted to meaning starts mistaking pain for passion. The longer he stays silent, the more she needs him to speak, not because she wants him, but because she needs closure. That's the paradox of silence. The man who says nothing ends up controlling the loudest parts of her mind. Addiction doesn't start with pleasure, it starts with relief. Relief from uncertainty, relief from doubt, relief from silence. That's the cycle every emotionally unavailable dynamic follows. It begins with anxiety, then a small reward, then another withdrawal. Over time, that rhythm becomes irresistible. She waits for a text. Days pass, nothing. Then suddenly, a message. Short, casual, meaningless. But her entire body reacts like she's been given oxygen after drowning. That single text resets her brain. The dopamine floods. The craving is rewarded. The loop tightens. Soon she doesn't even want a relationship, she just wants relief. The reward doesn't have to be big anymore, it just has to exist. A glance, a word, a touch. Anything that ends the ache. That's when she's no longer loving. She's chasing. The man who shows no interest becomes the supplier. He doesn't have to lie, manipulate, or even engage much. His distance is the drug. His attention, the high. And every withdrawal keeps her hooked deeper. Here's what makes it terrifying. The same brain chemistry that fuels love now fuels dependency. The body can't tell the difference between passion and pain. It just knows it needs another hit. That's why walking away feels impossible. Because she's not trying to leave him. She's trying to quit a chemical. Every addiction hides behind a story. And in this one, the story is him. The mysterious man who doesn't care. The one she's sure has a reason for his distance. Maybe he's broken. Maybe he's afraid to love. Maybe deep down he feels the same way but can't show it. That's how the fantasy protects the pain. She's not falling for who he is, she's falling for who she needs him to be. But eventually the illusion cracks. She starts to see the truth. He's not complex, he's just absent. There's no hidden depth behind the silence, no grand reason behind the inconsistency. He's not emotionally deep, he's emotionally detached, and that realization hurts. Because it exposes the truth she's been avoiding. She built the entire connection in her own mind. The fantasy is safer than the truth. Because if he's cold because of trauma, she can fix him. If he's distant because he's afraid, she can reach him. But if he's just uninterested, she has no power and no purpose. That's why many stay even after seeing the truth. The fantasy, even when fake, feels better than facing themselves. But here's the cost. The longer she keeps the illusion alive, the more she disconnects from reality. And when reality finally wins, it always does, it leaves behind a kind of emptiness that feels like withdrawal. Breaking the spell doesn't start with hate, it starts with honesty. The moment she admits, he never cared, the chemistry begins to fade. The pattern only survives through hope, and hope is the most addictive drug of all. Once it's gone, the craving loses strength. The way out isn't to fight the addiction, it's to understand it. To see that every unanswered text, every silence, every pull of attention wasn't proof of connection, but proof of imbalance. It wasn't love, it was dependency. The real power move isn't revenge or indifference, it's just detachment. Not the fake kind, not pretending you don't care, but genuinely losing interest because you see how empty the game is. When you stop chasing responses, you start hearing your own voice again. When you stop needing his attention, your nervous system finally rests, and that peace, that quiet confidence, is what breaks the loop for good. Because once you see how the illusion works, it can never own you again. Here's the brutal truth. No one gets addicted to a man who shows no interest because he's special. They get addicted because he mirrors something deeper. The need to earn love. Every unanswered text, every cold glance, every pause in conversation becomes a test of worth. And when you finally stop trying to pass that test, you realize there was never a prize, only pain disguised as passion. The silence that once haunted you becomes peaceful once you understand it was never about him. It was about the story you told yourself, that love must be chased, that you must be chosen, that your value lives in someone else's recognition. But it doesn't. The moment you stop begging to be seen, you start seeing yourself. 5 years from now, you could still be replaying his messages, decoding his silence, wondering what went wrong. Or you could be standing in front of a mirror, proud of the calm in your reflection, knowing no one's absence can disturb your peace again. The man who showed no interest was never your loss. He was your lesson. He showed you what happens when you mistake emotional starvation for connection, when you crave the hit more than the healing. Now you know better. So here's the choice. Keep romanticizing rejection, or finally walk away from the noise and rebuild your own power. Because the moment you stop chasing indifference, you start attracting reciprocity. No games, no silence, no uncertainty, just peace. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone's attention. Your freedom begins when their absence stops feeling like a loss. Your choice, your peace. Start now.